Hi guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another drone video. Today we're going to be diving into the top 10 mistakes that ruins your drone footage. And listen guys, these are mistakes I've personally done myself, and that is the purpose of today's video, to share those experiences with you guys, so hopefully you become more conscious of the mistakes you're either already making or are going to make down the road. So the goal of today's video is to save your drone footage, avoid making mistakes, and hopefully, make you a better drone pilot as well. All right, let's dive in.
Mistake number 1. Jerky movements. One of the most common mistakes in drone flying is jerky movements. It's one of the main things that separates professional looking footage from amateur footage, even when everything else is done right. On top of that, you can easily think your shot is stable because it looks fine on the controller screen, but once you get back into the edit on a bigger monitor, those small jerky movements become way more obvious. The hardest part is usually at the start. You need to gently adjust both sticks until you find the right speed and balance. Now in the edit, just cut away the start and the end and keep the clean, stable part in the middle. Sitting down can also help, because being more relaxed leads to smoother stick inputs. But the most important tip I can give you is going into the gain and expo and adjusting your stick sensitivity. This makes a huge difference in how smooth your shots look and how easy the drone is to control. Alright, moving over to mistake number 2. Auto white balance is another very common mistake that ruins footage. When you shoot with white balance set to auto, the temperature will change during the shot, which causes the image to shift between colder and warmer tones. This makes the footage jump in color, and it just doesn't look good. The right way to do this is to set your white balance manually. For normal daylight, I usually set it to around 5600 Kelvin, and if it's cloudy, I bump it up to around 6400 Kelvin, and at sunrise and sunset, I like to stay in that 6000 range for slightly warmer colors. But the most important part is to locking the value so it stays consistent, and if you want a quick and reliable way to do it, you can set white balance to auto for a moment, and then turn it off again to lock it in place. Mistake number 3. Blowing out the highlights. Now this is another big one, and it usually starts with overexposing. There's a lot of confusion around the idea that you should always overexpose log footage and pull it down in post. The problem is that the worst thing you can do is blow out the highlights. This is something I've painfully done myself, and you can't really rely on the EV meter when setting the exposure, especially if there's a lot of snow in the shot. The best tool to make sure you don't blow out the highlight is turning on the overexposure warning. This will show zebra stripes in the image. Just lower the exposure until the zebra stripes are gone. If you're shooting a scene where there are no important highlights you need to protect, that's when it makes sense to slightly overexpose if you have the option, and then pull the exposure down in post for a cleaner image without noise. Alright, next mistake, framing. Something I see a lot when watching drone footage on YouTube is people simply not framing their shots properly. The first thing you should turn on to help out with this is the grid, which you will find right below the exposure warning in the menu. This is a great composition tool and makes it much easier to frame your shots in a more professional way. Try placing your subject along the lines or at the intersections for a more balanced composition. In cinematography, this is called the rule of thirds, and it applies to both photos and videos. That said, the rule of thirds isn't always the right choice. Sometimes it makes sense to place the subject dead center as well. The important part is making that an intentional decision based on the scene you're shooting. Alright, mistake number 5, auto settings. This is another area where I see a lot of confusion, because most newer DJI drones can get slightly better dynamic range when shooting in D-Log-M with the ISO set to auto. This is especially noticeable on newer drones like the Mavic 4 Pro with a larger sensor, and because of that, some people think that putting everything in auto will automatically give them better image quality. Now while that is partially true, there is a big downside. Because when you shoot in full auto, the exposure will change throughout the shot, which can ruin the image. On top of that, your shutter speed will drift away from the 180-degree shutter rule, where you want your shutter speed to be roughly double your frame rate to get that natural motion blur. Now the good news is that there's a simple way to fix this while still keeping the benefits of auto ISO, and that is by locking the exposure. You can do this by tapping the screen to bring up the yellow box, then tapping and holding that box to lock the exposure. But before you lock it, you still want to expose correctly using manual settings, choosing the right ND filter, and make sure everything looks good. Then lock the exposure. That way you lock in the best possible exposure while still taking advantage of the full dynamic range. This brings me over to mistake number 6, setting your settings on the ground. When the drone is on the ground, it's usually in a much darker environment. So once you think everything is dialed in and you take off, the lighting changes completely as soon as you're up in the air and facing that actual scene you're capturing. The image will be much brighter and the white balance will often be different from what you set it to on the ground. This is also why I don't swap ND filters on the ground, just because the image is a little bit underexposed. I know that once I'm up in the air, I'll be facing a much brighter scene. Now, another great tip I can give you when you're setting your settings is always tilt the camera up towards the sky to make it as close as possible to the lighting you will be shooting in. Ironically, this brings me over to mistake number 7, always flying high up in the air. Because another mistake I often see in drone flying is always flying too high. And I get it, the instinct is that because it's a drone, it needs to be way up in the air. But if you want more dynamic, interesting shots, you need to get closer to things. Flying low and close to the ground adds depth, speed and scale to your footage. Sometimes that even means turning off obstacle avoidance to get the shot you want. Now think of it like this. Flying close to the ground is like having your own cameraman, operating a gimbal or running a camera on a slider, giving you smooth, stable movement. And when you combine that with the tracking features most DJI drones have, you get a lot more variety and something that feels different from the usual high, wide drone shots. Alright, mistake number 8. Always flying during the day. This is something a lot of people spend a surprising amount of time figuring out. It's very easy to check the weather, go out in the middle of the day when the sun is shining and think this is going to be perfect for drone shots. And the truth is, it's not. It's boring. I pretty much stopped shooting in the middle of the day unless I'm just showcasing something specific. If you want your drone footage to look good or actually stand out, you need atmosphere. You need to look for clouds. Is there fog? Is it sunrise or sunset? Just look at these two shots taken at the exact same place. One is shot during sunset, the other in the middle of the day. Same thing here, one shot with harsh midday sun and one shot in the evening with completely different lighting. Yes, color grading plays a role, but grading won't save your footage if there are no colors, contrast or mood to work with in the first place. Alright, mistake number 9. Dirty ND filters. Listen, I know how painful it is to swap ND filters on these drones. They're small, hard to handle and a pain to attach when you're out in the field, especially if it's cold or wet outside. And it's very easy to accidentally touch the glass or get some dirt on the filter. Now I have done this as well, and the problem is that if there's something on your ND filter, it's extremely hard to see it on the controller screen. And especially if you're shooting in log, you usually won't notice it until you get back to the editing, and by then it's too late. So the best tip I can give you is always wipe the ND filter once before you attach it and once after you've attached it, just to make sure there's nothing on it before you launch the drone. Alright, mistake number 10. Not backing up your footage. This one technically won't ruin your footage. It will straight up destroy it if you get unlucky. So whether you are using internal storage or your microSD card, transferring files to your computer after every shoot is one of the best habits you can build. It's very easy to leave footage on the SD card or the internal storage if you only shoot, a few clips and still have plenty of space left. But if you lose your drone while you're out flying, which can happen to anyone, you don't just lose the drone, you also lose all the footage on it as well. And that is a brutal way to lose shots you might not be able to recreate. So backing up after every flight removes that risk completely and it gives you peace of mind.
Alright guys, if you feel like there's any mistakes that I missed, please drop a comment below. And if you found this video helpful or you want more drone content in general, I would appreciate it if you could smash that like and subscribe button before you head off. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys in my next video. Fly safe.